To the Race Exchange. This is session number 4, which is great. So far they've been great, such good mixed groups, such vocal characters and loads of different stories shared. So today we're talking about racism, romance and relationships. Before we get into the conversation, I'd like everyone to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with who's first on my screen, and I've got Andy and Andrea. If you want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, well, I'm Andrew. I'm 48 years old. I've been married to this beautiful creature, Andrea, for 15 years. Yeah, it is 15 years now.
This year.
And we've been together, I think, 20 or 21 years. We met in a record shop and sort of got together through a shared love of music. I'm a DJ and producer. Andrea's also a DJ, and you can say about the other stuff you do.
I'm also 48. I'm 2 weeks older than Andy, so I'm cradle snatching. I DJ, but I also work for a charity called Brighter Sound. I also make my own jewellery out of leather, and I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think pertinent to this as well, we have a 9-year-old daughter, which I think obviously out of the relationships and especially discussion of racism, anything to do kind of with cultural differences, obviously that's a conversation that
we've been having a lot recently.
But, you know, it's just obviously a responsibility that we've had to take very seriously as being a mixed couple as well.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So I've muted everyone now, and then you can either unmute yourself if you're about to talk, and I've got Lloyd next up.
Hi, I'm Lloyd, I'm 34. I'm originally from Hume in Manchester. Currently living in Berlin. I'm doing a master's out here in English cultural studies, which might be ironic because I'm in Germany, but yeah, so obviously this is coming from the community that I come from, particularly my part of Hume. This has always been an issue that has been quite important to me, and obviously been brought into a sharper focus. And I'm just here really to support in any way that I can. If there's anything that I can add to any kind of discussion, then sweet, I'm more than happy to share it.
Thank you, Lloyd. And then we're going to go down to Jessie. If you can unmute yourself. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jessie. So I'm a freelance artist specialising in textiles and fashion, and I do workshops and just loads of different things to do with arts and creativity and things like that. I'm really interested in looking into other cultures and understanding other cultures, and obviously being white, that comes with a lot of layers and stuff like that. So I just want to learn different ways that I can help, and I want to be active in anti-racism, and engaging in conversations like this, open and honest conversations, will only help that. So yeah.
Thank you, Jessie. Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm from Sheffield. So I live in Manchester now, but I'm from like a white middle class area in Sheffield. I have been with my fiance for 7 years. He's Nigerian. We actually get married a month today, so very exciting. But what I've also discovered through being with him for the last 7 years is I wasn't as clued up as I thought I was, and I knew nothing about what life is like as a Black person. So that's something that I'm really interested in, sort of like opening up the discussion and being able to have those honest discussions with people. Oh no, my internet's iffy.
Thank you. I'm also Nigerian, well, half Nigerian. So I've got Pops next on my screen.
Don't swear, don't swear, don't swear. Hi, I'm Pops. I am a writer, producer, vocalist, DJ a bit, and work in a record store as well, which I totally forgot about during lockdown. But yeah, next week we're back. I am mixed race. I grew up in lots of strange places around the north, but my family are all from the south. My dad's Dominican and my mum is English, Irish, all of that big mixture. It's quite a Scottish family though, it turns out, apparently, which explains the beer that I have today. And yeah, I've had a lot of different relationships, mixed relationships. And I'm sorry, I'm also gay as a storm, as my mum would say. So yeah, I've had a lot of mixed experiences, and I think later on we'll talk about, at the moment during lockdown, obviously during the reason obviously this conversation has originated from BLM situation that's been going on and the conversations that started. And I think for a lot of people from every side, with all this time we have with lockdown, I've really unpicked quite a lot of problematic stuff from past relationships. So it was interesting because I didn't know the topic of this until a bit later on. So it's funny that this is coming at the exact same time, and I was like, hang on a minute, that was really messed up. So yeah, you've caught me at a time and I'm just going through it in my mind. So yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Time to get it off your chest. Thank you, Pops. I've got Hannah next on my screen. Unmute. Yeah.
My name's Hannah and I'm 29. I'm a freelance writer and teacher and singer and comedian and loads of other stuff. And I think one of the things that drew attention to this was the fact that I'm also Yemi's housemate. So oh my God, and we're in the same house. And anyway, yeah, so when all the Black Lives Matter stuff happened, I realized like how much she was affected by it all. And like how much she'd been going through that I didn't even realize she'd been going through, and I suppose I just wanted to learn more about it so I can see what I can do to help, really. And also because I think because I'm a teacher as well, it's like I do think it's really important that I should be aware of these things so I know how to help children who might be struggling with feelings like this. Sorry, my phone's buzzing away. But yeah, like feelings like this that I don't even know about, you know? So it's like I want to be able to help the next generation as best I can, really. So yeah, that's probably all I have to say anyway.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Hannah. And then I know it says Nessa on the screen, but would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm not called Nessa, that's my mum. I'm not sure why that's coming up. My name's actually Lewis. I am 28 years old. I work in a lot of things. I work as a carpenter, self-employed at the moment, but I also do a lot of events work in the summer times. I can sometimes fix cars, but not a lot of the time. But that's my main sort of stuff. I guess I'm here for a lot of reasons. I think obviously a massive reason is to support Yem and everyone else here. I've been in interracial relationships and non-interracial relationships, and I guess so I'm here to support, but also hopefully understand a bit more and maybe learn something, and maybe be able to share some experiences, hopefully. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Lewis. And last but not least, Mike. If you just unmute, yeah.
Emma.
All good, I can hear you.
Cool. So I'm Mike, 29. I live in Manchester, but I did move about quite a bit when I was a kid as well, so I've lived all over. Yeah, I've lived in pretty much majority sort of white areas, middle class most of my life. But I did grow up a little different to other people because I was in a predominantly black church up until I was a teenager. So from when I was born, basically till then. So I did kind of mix with people from other cultures from a very young age. You know what I mean? But yeah, I have obviously realised as I've grown up, other people who I've become friends with and stuff didn't have that experience. I thought that was obviously normal. So yeah, I guess I'm just here to kind of figure out how I can be a better ally and sort of influence sort of people where I come from and that kind of thing, I guess.
Perfect, brilliant. Thank you, everyone. So without further ado, I'm going to start. I've called these confessional conversations because they are, you know, they work for me as confessions and as therapeutic for me as they might be for you, I don't know, and obviously opening up questions. But I've written down a couple of things I'd like to start us off with, and then I'll kind of put it out to the group and we can just naturally talk. So in terms of romance, race and relationships, the first ever real memory I have of knowing that I, for some reason, was going to be involved in mixed race relationships was when I was actually 9 years old. I was at school. It was like a PSHE class, and there was a documentary, and I will never forget this, even though I might not get the statistic exactly right. But the documentary said only a third of mixed race relationships are with a female woman of colour. The rest, the balance is tipped at it being a male person of colour with a white female, you know, relevant to Britain. And I remember watching that and just thinking, like, why don't people want to get with black girls? Like, that was literally the thought that went through my head. And I don't think I ever really took it seriously. But from then on, like year 6, year 7, I found myself constantly trying to be wanted by all the white guys in the school. Like, I put myself out there, like actively trying to be the center of attention for that audience, because in some ways it was like aspirational. It was like, oh, well, maybe I'll be better if a white guy's attracted to me. I'm not asked to, you know, if I've got like Asian friends, I've got friends from different backgrounds, but I want to have a romantic relationship with a white man because that's better. And that is literally until I was probably I don't know, late teens. That's pretty much how I kind of lived my romantic development coming of age. And obviously now I'm 30 years old, I'm very reflective of that, but I've kind of accepted what I had done, which was try to be accepted, I guess. But what I've started to realize is that the sadness in it is that I felt that I had to be with that person of mixed heritage beyond love. It had to be, it was actually more like a functional, to be better in society. People will see me with a white man on my sleeve, on my shoulder, whatever, and think, oh, she's okay, which is awful, because you just think, like, why would that even have to come into it? Surely the type of person that they are, and blah, 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 all sorts of other things. And I think I spent most of my 20s reflecting on that, kind of feeling quite guilty, guilty for my kind of black brothers and sisters out there that I feel like I might have ostracized by trying to be that way, but also guilty at my own weakness of being like, why have I been so like susceptible to this? Where has it come from? Why do I believe that it's true? And I still have to this day. I hold like very much so that like all of my relationships meant something 100%, don't get me wrong. But I do know that especially when you're coming of age and you're trying to be accepted through relationships, that for that to be a goal is problematic, and it's a sign of a certain type of oppression, a power balance, etc., etc. And you know, that teacher was never to know that that thought was going to come in my head later on. But that is, you know, I'll never forget that lesson. And I guess I don't really know, like to kind of wrap that up a little bit and kind of open it out and talk a bit more about it. I guess like it's also, I am in a predominantly white country. I am Black British, and I do like British people, of course. So like I can't say it's all a bad thing to want to integrate. But what I am saying is that I felt, especially growing up as a Black female, especially trying to be more white in many aspects of my lifestyle in order to fit in, that relationship aspect was a big part of that. And nowadays, I mean, I don't know. I feel like now I've come to terms with it and it's settled in my heart. Perhaps in the future, I don't know who I'm going to end up with. There was 10 years ago when I definitely told myself, you're going to end up with a white person. That's it. Like, that was the goal. And that doesn't really sound very nice to anyone. I'm not trying to be the, this is very much a confession like I'm not proud of, but it's something that I have to accept to be able to move on from it. And that's kind of that. I don't know if anyone kind of has anything they wanted to say off the back of that. Please, yeah. We'll go with Pops first.
It's really interesting that you talk about that. I was talking with a friend about this very recently, who is in her 30s and still feels like that, about wanting this affirmation from a Caucasian partner. But the thing is, I guess all I wanted to say in response to it is that it's not just about, I mean, I think it's very loaded that those statistics were being told to kids. I bet they didn't break it down and go, how many Irish people are going out with Scottish people? How many, like, they didn't break that down. Like, it seems quite loaded. And there's lots of little things from school and from growing up. Because we grew up in a predominantly white country, in Britain, there's lots of things that have gone unnoticed, and that's a big thing about what's been happening recently. And I think the main thing is that I would say to maybe not see that as a weakness of you wanting that. You have to remember that every single film, maybe bar two, you watched as a kid, every single kids one, the Goonies, like whatever you watch when you were growing up, all of this stuff, they all have the love shot, it's the money shot, or whatever it's called, where it's the golden moment where the love interest turns around and looks like unbelievable, and the other one looks at them and it's like, oh my God, they're gonna kiss. And you've never seen, I watched Black Panther for the first time the other day. Don't have a go at me, I didn't get the chance, right?
It's okay.
Not judging you.
Seeing that beautiful moment where I really wanted them to kiss, I couldn't wait for it. And seeing that kind of shot, the proper Hollywood, full budget, full filter, about to kiss shot where everyone looks devastatingly irresistible, I haven't seen that ever properly done with Black characters or Black actors or actresses. I never had that moment when I was a kid. I never saw that. And I don't think you would have either. And I still don't think there's enough of it. So I think that probably definitely played a part in why you, because all you see is white couples, you're naturally going to gravitate towards a white heartthrob growing up as a teenager, or, you know, they were held on pedestals. They have a whole kind of, you know, roster of them coming through, the Channing Tatums and all this. So, you know, I don't see it as a weakness. I think that when you're surrounded by it, like bombarded by it, how else are you going to see affirmation, like romantic affirmation?
Thank you, Pops. Andrea, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, growing up, I mean, I'm half Nigerian, seems to be a lot of Nigerians around, and Bajan. And I don't really remember having a type, but I do remember that I kind of probably in primary school, I had a lot more Black boyfriends. And then growing up, because I went to live in Nigeria for a bit when I was 8 and came back when I was 14, and coming back and trying to fit in, which was pretty hard work because I was totally different from my peers, even though I'd kept in touch with them while I was away. I never thought I had a type, I don't think. And then I remember, like, getting into clubbing and stuff like that, and going out with predominantly white men, and then meeting up with my Black friends, and some of my Black boy friends would say, why are you with a white guy? Why are you not with a Black guy? But these were people who were also dating white girls. And that to me, I just couldn't understand why that was happening. And I just couldn't understand it, because I don't think I have a type. It's just who I want to be with at the time. And me and Andy got together because we both loved music, and we met in a record shop and went clubbing, and, you know, we had mutual friends. So it kind of progressed, and that's the way it's always been. But yeah, I just that thing about black girls with white guys, not okay. Black guys with white girls, okay. Black girls with white guys, not okay thing.
Thank you. I think it's weird, isn't it? Because I've personally had experiences where people have like come and commended me and be like, oh, I love to see this, like this, you know. Like, and you're like, that's great, because that is the better of two evils, 100%. But like, wow, you know, like, as if people will look at you and don't see love or whatever it is that brings people together, and they see that first. And that's obviously a problem with general, you know, skin and, you know, the issue that we have with racism being a visual thing as well as it being a deep-rooted systemic thing. It's difficult. You kind of just have to be like, okay, cool, and maybe this is a form of protest, but then why does my relationship has to be a form of protest? I don't know. Or just, you know, showing that something is like showcasing something, you know what I mean? Did anyone have anything else they wanted to share in the meantime, or anything that they were going to kind of maybe ask Lloyd? I just saw your hand pop up.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny because I had some kind of similar experiences, but then kind of opposite as well. Because so obviously in central Manchester, it's always been like very mixed. The people are mixed, and you know, there's perhaps not necessarily so much of a taboo that there is in other places, or from my generation to other generations and that. And when I was a kid or young, I always imagined I'd probably have kids by my early 20s, just because that's what seemed to be happening around me, and that's, you know, that was just what reality was like around me. And then and if I ever did, I guess I always just assumed that they'd be mixed race, just because that was the reality. Or the girls I knew, or the girls I met, or the girls in the area, or the girls in the community, or the chance encounters, or the stolen kisses and that. They were all black and mixed race girls for me in the area. And as far as I remember, there was only one white girl our age in our area at the time. She was never really about. So it was kind of different for me, just because of a reality. Obviously, I was at the same time I was exposed to all films and TV and media and stuff like that still projected this image, still conditioned this very sort of this white image upon me. But you know, I was more time hanging around on the streets anyway, rather than watching films and stuff like that. And then when I used to knock on for girls or go inside the houses and that, it was just their screw faces and teeth getting kissed by like mums and dads and families. Sometimes I had to wait around the corner so I didn't get seen by the family or family friends or even neighbours. But that was exciting for me because you know, it was naughty and it was cheeky, and I was a bit naughty and a bit cheeky anyway. But another interesting thing about that, you know, in terms of about having a type and stuff like that, is in the environment that I was in the time that I was in, groups I was with or whatever, there was a certain emphasis, let's say, on mixed race girls, and white girls. We used to call them bluefoots at the time. They had a certain place in the imagination as well, because they were considered to be, or perceived somehow to be easy. You know, so we used to go to white areas. We used to go Trafford Centre or town, and or the suburbs, different areas in that parks, just to check for girls like that. And then, you know, from about the age of 12, that's probably the only wholesome kind of activity we could do. And so we just jump on a bike or jump on a net and go on what we used to call like gal mooches and that. But I could talk all day, really. But there's a couple of things as well that I should talk about, really. That, you know, that was as much a necessity as anything, because where we were from, you know, obviously there wasn't a lot of girls or white girls about and that. But then as soon as it got to about year 9, for any girl, if they were in any way what we used to call, I mean, going back years now, so forgive the outdated slang and that, but bunting, then chances were that she had a man, and that man was in his mid-20s, you know, probably some sort of head or even like a businessman, and he would scoop him up from school and take him off, you know, from year 9. So prestige local girls weren't really even ever on the cards, and then college opened it up for me because I went to Retto. We used to chill by the Retto anyway. It was just on the edge of our estate, and so that kind of brought girls to us. But then it wasn't until then I really started meeting white girls and socialising with white girls, hanging with white girls and tussling with them and that. And then at 18, I moved to Leeds, and obviously my world got turned upside down. Everything was completely different. Now I'm in Berlin. Most of my friends are what we call expats, which is apparently just a term we use to describe white immigrants. And so my romantic life is actually fairly monochrome, if you like, although not entirely. But I'm not quite sure where that fits now with my initial ideas of what I thought I imagine my life would pan out like in terms of family and stuff like that.
What I'm getting from what you're saying is that, like, basically because you were in a mixed, because you're in a mixed upbringing, actually, like, your preferences were to do with your surroundings and what was immediately around you. Interestingly enough, though, because that's not always the case, I guess. Like, you know, people can often feel like they're in predominantly white areas and therefore make a reason why they're like, I only want to get with Asian people because I've not seen any Asian people before. And you fall into the realm of like exoticism and stuff like that, of course.
I was like that, definitely.
It's interesting though, thank you for sharing that story, because there's two sides to everything of, you know, going around someone's house and their mum not wanting to see you because you're a white man. I've definitely had that feeling before. And that comes down to an issue of integration, I guess. That's a deeper rooted issue about why either people who are migrants and live here now feel like they can't integrate with the local white British communities, or their daughters or sons can't, or they shouldn't, and why that is. Why do they feel like they shouldn't? Why can't it be like this lovely, prestigious, unique thing? That's kind of what I've got from what you've said. So thank you very much. I know, Emily, I don't know if you still remember what you were going to say.
Yeah. Well, you're streaming football. So is it?
It's a little. It's okay, but it's a little bit dodgy. But if it continues, you could also put some in the chat, and I could say it for you.
Oh yeah. Just let me know if you can't hear me.
Yeah, we go. Let's listen to you talk though. I want to hear your voice.
So I was just basically saying how it just seems to be that when being with a black man is very fetishized almost. So like, you know, before I didn't really realize that it was a thing. It was really obvious. People just be like, oh yeah, you know, black guys or whatever. And then when I got with he, you know, people used to say to me, oh, so you like black guys then? But I was like, well, I got with him because we got on, you know, that was why we got together. And then I just notice it all the time now, and I can't believe that it's acceptable. And then I'm gonna have to type, I think.
No, carry on. No, so basically, what you've kind of, well, if you want to keep track, you can share. But
oh, good. So
acceptable to.
Yeah, but so I mean, you think, you know, you've got people who just brought then or putting all black people, all black men in one box, and you know, I'll get with them wherever they're from, whatever country they're from, however different they look. But yeah, I like black guys, and then and it really annoys me, and it's still an almost acceptable way to speak, and it's something that needs to stop, and people need to understand why, basically.
Yeah, people need to stop asking the question or saying that you're into that kind of person, and just making that as a statement, as if like you can't say anything. You can't even, not even being asked a question. They're just saying, oh, so you're into this, point blank. Not fair. Labeling, you know, they're labeling you, they're labeling the other person. They're not even considering just, I don't know, the fact that you might just be in love. Definitely. I know Hannah had a hand up, and then we'll kind of open it back out again. Yeah, please rejoin. Thank you, Emily.
Well, it's actually, I was still good. It's still a relatable point, because it's just like, yeah, why do we have to have a type? Like, that always really, oh, sorry, but like, do you know what I mean though? It's hard not to swear, but also, like, it does annoy me so much, because it's like, I've lived in loads of different places. I'm from, like, you know, I've moved around loads when I was younger and stuff like that, like. And like, one of the things that really annoyed me was when I moved to Newcastle and I was like super poor, but because I used to live in Lancashire, all the Geordie kids called me posh. And I was like, I'm like super poor, you know what I mean? You can't be like ripping on me for being poor, for being like, you know, for being posh when I can't afford anything. Like, that's not fair, you know? So it's like everyone's putting all these freaking labels on you just for their convenience, and it's very annoying, because then
it is a convenience thing. It is.
But like, yeah, back to the type thing. like, yeah, it's like, then it's like, all you're doing is demeaning my relationship with this person down to what's convenient for you. And it's like, if we can phase out words like gay because that makes somebody uncomfortable, why can't we phase out things like that? Like, you know, like being like, oh, okay, oh, so you're into that guy. It's like, no, you shouldn't be allowed to say that. You shouldn't be allowed to like say that to someone and make somebody feel uncomfortable, because yeah, I find the idea of types very frustrating in general, like regardless of race, because like, well, in my opinion, you know, like, I guess everybody's different, but like, in my opinion, like, you know, you just fall in love with someone because you fall in love with them, like, not particularly because of their aesthetics necessarily, like, even regardless of race, like, you know, you just have gone out with somebody who is much shorter than me and much taller than me, you know, and you just don't know. You don't know who you're going to fall for. So I think, yeah, I find that very, very annoying. But that's my point.
It is. I think the convenience thing is a really big point, and also, you know, as much as we don't want it to be the case, it still is the case that that we've been I don't want to say, like, you know, in society trained. We have been trained, because the continuous conversations around types, etc., and the separations between being black, white, Asian, Middle Eastern, or whatever, those kind of phrases or ways of speaking still exist, and we're not cutting them out, then people will continue to say, oh, that's a Middle Eastern person with an Asian person, like, you know, Southeast Asian person, fancy that, as a, you know, that's just, we just need to take that away. Those moments need to go away. Do anyone have anything to kind of share? So I'll go with Lewis and then Pops. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, it's I think it's still related. I think maybe actually to kind of what you said when about when you were younger, but I guess this is a different side of things. But I obviously I was born in Manchester, but then I grew up in Hebden, and it is like a very middle class white place. And throughout sort of school, it was the same at school. And it's I remember when I went to college after that in Bradford and studied photography. When I was still quite young, and I had this crush on a girl there. She was from, I think she's from Ghana. And after a while, I finally like plucked up the courage to ask her out. And she basically was just like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I only date black guys. And obviously, like, at the time, I was like devastated, because it took me quite a lot to get to that point. And then I sort of remember after that for a while, like, having thoughts of thoughts of being like, oh, I wish I was black, you know, because then maybe like I'd be appealing, you know, to those kind of girls. And then it's not something I've ever thought about really ever again, you know. So obviously it was like a small thought, and it was interesting when Yem got in touch with me about this, and I'm not very good at these Zoom things, so I wanted to try and have something to say, and I've been really thinking about that, and it kind of made me feel a little bit guilty, really, because I kind of thought, you know, like, wow, what like a thing to even not say to anyone, but to say out loud in my head, because of what actually comes with like being a young black male, and how actual, you know, how much harder that must be in everyday life, even in somewhere that we consider a more accepting country like the UK. And yeah, it kind of just made me think, wow, what a bad thing to even think, just so that this girl might have said yes to me, you know. And yeah, it just kind of really brought that up for me over the past week. So I'm not really sure what I took from that, but I just thought I'd share it anyway, because
that is a great sharing. It's the layers of complexity, all kind of just rooted in the fact that, like, why should it be an issue? We know that it is an issue. We kind of know why it is an issue, but we know that it shouldn't be. Thank you, Lewis. Pops.
This might not be love Bradford, by the way. Great choice on uni. Such a good place.
Love you, Pops.
So basically what I was going to say is that I found it interesting, and just because, Emily, when you said, when people say, you know, when I'm with a black guy, and then you went, and you know, we all know what you mean, and that's a big thing. I am super protective of the black males in my life. I have to say it, like, the fetishization, the stuff I've heard women go up and say to them, and the stuff that I hear black males say about themselves, it's like the fetishization, turning you into a body part, let's face it, is so insidious that it is within, it's almost like not every black male, but the black community is supposed to take it as black male community is supposed to take it as a compliment. and use it in that way. And I've heard it used against Asian, not South Asian men, like East Asian males, and the other way. And it's this strange fetishization of body parts, and where pornography comes into it as well, to the point where I'm sure some of you might have seen in the protest recently. I was so upset when I saw a girl holding up a thing saying something about liking, I'm not allowed to swear.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I think I saw that one as well.
Not cool. And somebody did a really good article about it. And I just find that the fetishization, I believe, has had an effect on the black male community, especially the younger, you know, this whole black brute, this black buck thing of like feeling like there's something physically and massively different about dating a black man. I find it quite disturbing still, and it's so prevalent. Like you say, Emily, it's so normalized. Office workers, someone who works with you, it wouldn't even take a Christmas party for her to imply something like that. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's so damaging. I can't imagine being a black male and dealing with, I should be flattered, but also I'm now just this, and I'm not really a person. I'm
not even a person anymore. I'm just this thing, this bit. Yeah. No. It's awful, because then it's like it's hard enough being a black male, being accused of being the issues that, you know, being a criminal or whatever, but then being like you can't win, whichever, you know, it's awful. And I guess that's just a wider issue, but we're kind of obviously focusing on kind of romantic engagements and things like that. Has anyone had any kind of experience? Okay, I don't want to like out anyone, but as you know, does anyone feel like they see interracial relationships and still kind of think, oh, you know, like, does that kind of come into play? I mean, something to think about. And if it's, Andrea.
I still, like, when I'm walking down the street with Andy, I still think, well, when I see a black person come towards me, I still think, what do they think about me? And I mean, when before Andy, I had a long-term relationship with a guy called Jed, and my dad didn't really like him, but I think that's because we were all unemployed and didn't really want to do anything at that time, and he just thought he wasn't doing anything with his life. And obviously with Nigerians you have to be educated and want to go out and work and stuff, and he didn't really want to do that. So he would kind of like look down on him as not good enough for his daughter. But I think he likes you.
Hope so.
This long.
Yeah, it's you know, it's expressed approval. But that's it. I mean, I think in terms of, because a lot of what's been discussed, I think is in a very, either like from a young perspective, or being a teenager, or kind of like early experimenting and going out with different people and kind of, you know, just trying these things out as you grow up. And I think one thing we've not really touched on, I suppose, is like the wider things of, I suppose, family accepting a relationship. Obviously, we've got kids, so there's other layers of that as well, because, you know, we've got grandparents who, you know, from both sides, who look after our daughter and stuff like that. And I think also the responsibility, especially as a white parent, you know, because you know, myself included, you speak to white people about whiteness, and there's just a bit of a, you know, I think because we're so used to it being the default for so many years, and everybody in the UK will go, well, you know, I'm a bit Irish, I'm a bit this, I'm a bit that. You know, and you kind of know, well, vaguely, I know about, you know, migration over the years, but I don't really know what my roots are. So I think when you're then imparting to your offspring about what they're made up of, you know, that's kind of really interesting, because you definitely, I mean, I've spoken to, you know, kids who have, you know, a result of mixed relationships, and they're kind of, their parents never had that chat with them in terms of if their circumstances didn't force a revealing of either certain kinds of knowledge or essential background history, or you need these skills or be on your toes in this circumstance, you need to be able to operate, you need to be like this in these in these circumstances, then I think a lot of it seems like in previous generations, a lot of parents have kind of left their kids to it. It's like, okay, well, the romance, especially if the parents have separated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, well, having spoken to, friends of mine who were younger than me, but a lot older than my daughter, and going, okay, well, my parents didn't really bring this up. I kind of had to find out by myself. So I'm like, that is, this is something where I've got to get inside the experience of people who are non-white in this country, in terms of being able to empathize in order to be able to properly explain to my daughter, who's already really clued up, because she grew up in a far more mixed environment than I have, and I make an effort to speak to as many different people as possible. But I think that responsibility is something which still doesn't seem it's taken seriously enough by white people who choose to engage in a mixed relationship, especially in this country. I think there's obviously the appeal, whether people are on it. I think Lloyd brought it up before, like, if you grow up not in a particularly mixed environment, then suddenly going for someone who's not like you, is that product of some kind of fetishization or some kind of fantasy thing or a novelty thing, or this person is a hideous word but exotic, you know what I mean? So it's kind of I'm sort of rambling on a bit there, as I do tend to do once I start talking. But I think in terms of the responsibility, and then how that obviously then feeds into education, which is obviously a very hot topic at the moment, which is probably another 2 of these meetings to even scratch the surface of that. But I think in terms of parents, and this is, I think, one of the things about the recent basically post George Floyd and all the very open conversations that have happened since that, is I've spoken to pretty much everyone I've bumped into about race, whether it's been prompted or not. It's just kind of come out in conversation very naturally, because people are like, finally we get to talk about it. But I think this is like, well, I need to speak to friends of ours who are in mixed relationships and kind of get their take on it, you know what I mean, both to see I think so we can kind of focus our parenting, but also to kind of, I think this is like, there's potential for a lot of mistakes or like missed opportunities for learning for the parents and for teaching your kids, because the kids are growing up in such a mixed and open environment. And it's like, well, we had nothing like that when we were younger. I'm nearly 50. I grew up in Stockport, so this is like, for me, this is trying to see life through my daughter's eyes, and also the way that she interacts with her mates and talks about people's backgrounds and race in a very straight up way, which is brilliant, how kids are. So I think that's something in terms of, I think, responsibilities once you go beyond a relationship and then bring kids into the equation. I mean, that's probably another whole topic, but I think as parents who've, we've probably not touched on it enough, but I know loads of parents who have kids our age who come, are a mixed couple who've said, we've not had that conversation yet. Maybe because they live, we're in Stretford, so in terms of, we're living in a fairly comfortable lifestyle. There's not, the kids haven't really had any incidents that have maybe prompted a need to have that chat, but it's not. So I think it's really good at the moment that, people seem very keen to kind of to chat and open up and learn, see different points of views, because I think, a lot of the like Emily, like you were saying, about the, just the kind of the labeling of your fiance, and immediately kind of popping something on your relationship when they probably don't know you that well and probably never met your other half. You know what I mean? It's like, well, these are people, and if it sounds like a lot of people need to get out more. And just,
but not in the lockdown.
Yeah,
but not at the moment.
But in these conversations, I think a lot of these comments and the kind of labeling that's come out of this, I think of. I just sorry, Andrew's tapping me on the leg saying be quiet. I think it's just come. A lot of people haven't had the fortune to be surrounded by a really good mixture of people. So this is where a lot of the kind of ignorance and kind of labeling, or just people resorting to stereotypes. It's how do we break those down? Is it, is it getting these labels and say, well, trace, where does the phrase a type come from? you know, because it's an everyday saying. Or, you know, obviously the thing about the fetishization of the black male, that has fairly sinister origins 200 or 300 years ago. So it's kind of, I think it's just pulling all these things out and kind of unpacking them like everyone's doing with, you know, a lot of stuff at the moment. But I think it's so complicated. There's a load of mental spaghetti flying everywhere, and most of it's coming out of my mouth at the moment.
Yeah.
No, but and Andy, you're completely right. Like, in terms of, I think basically this conversation right now will mean that the next time that any of us go into the real world and meet some people who are in mixed heritage relationships, we might be, our blinkers will be on, our antennas will be up. We'll be thinking about what's going on in that situation. We might hear someone say something, and we might feel from this conversation that we can bring that up. And I'm not saying it's going to take one conversation to change the world, but it's going to take continuous loops of conversations to just bring it back to the forefront and call it out and say, what do you mean by that? What, like, or ask people what they mean, ask them to explain what they mean. And if they don't know what they mean, then just say that is just some horrible stereotype that you've picked up. Just let go of it, put it in the bin, you know, let's start a new conversation, ask me about something else. And that's kind of that's the hope out of talking about it. I do think when you're talking about the education side, I was starting to think about young people and young love, and like, there's a whole aspect of like, could people be missing out on love or relationships with certain people because of racism? 100%. Like, you know, so like, as well as it's just a very personal, emotional thing, it's like to think that anyone out there might stop themselves seeking, you know, the one and true thing that we all really want because of racism is a whole nother kettle of fish, and something that's very, very real. Do anyone have any kind of contributions, anything they want to share? We're kind of coming up to like the last 10 minutes. And I think it's been great so far, but I don't know if there's anyone had anything else to say. I think there was a couple of things that I wanted to bring to the table in the instance that like we didn't have anything else. Yes. So I don't know if anyone knows anyone who has. Let me just ask a big question. Has everyone here been in a mixed race relationship? If you can, put your hands up if you have. Okay, so we've got 2 people who haven't. The people who haven't, do you feel like there might be a reason for that at all? Like, is there any particular, like, or what would you say in kind of response to that? And absolutely not trying to make you look like you're prejudiced at all. Like, quite the opposite.
I'd say for me personally, it's not been down to anything like I have a type, or like you were talking about then at all. So, you know, I'm comfortable with like anybody. But I guess it's more down to like circumstances where you grow up, who you interact with, that kind of thing. If I grow up in a majority white area, it's going to be mostly white girls that I'm with. So it's never for a particular reason like that. What someone did touch on before is like the kind of fetishization thing. Because that's something I definitely noticed other people have, is that they wanted to be with people who weren't white because that's all that they were surrounded by all the time. That wasn't really so much of a thing for myself. I guess because, as I mentioned, that church I was in when I was growing up, I was very used to seeing mixed race relationships. Like most of my mum's friends are in mixed race relationships. So I've had encounters, I guess you could say, with a variety of girls, different backgrounds, like, but never like a committed sort of long-term relationship sort of thing. That's just down to circumstance, really.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine, and that is just the nature of the beast. You know, at the end of the day, we live in a predominantly white country, so the likelihood is, the chances are statistically, you know, this might not necessarily be the case. However, we are also part of a global platform. We're also part of a global social community, so to speak, and you want to feel that like any place you end up in the world, that you wouldn't feel that you can't be with someone because of their race, regardless of where they are. You know, South America, one of the most mixed race places in the world. I went there myself. I found myself biased still. Not because there were so many attractive men. Oh my goodness, like Colombian men, they're so attractive. Not to kind of like say that they all were or weren't, but I found myself around a lot of attractive Colombian men. Yet I was still seeking, and this is where I was going as I was traveling, I was still seeking out the one white guy I could find. right? So to kind of reverse it and, you know, put myself on the spotlight a little bit here, but, you know, I'm just gonna be honest, I was still looking for like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do anything with anyone or like have a date with anyone, it's gonna be the one white guy here, because I don't know, to be honest, because it was just that much, that far back in my brain that's what I look for. So what I think I'd like us to kind of like, you know, whether you've been in mixed race relationships or not, it's just the idea that like it shouldn't going forward ever be a consideration for anyone, whether it's just to see it, just to, you know, just to try it out. That shouldn't be a thing either. It should just be a natural response between two people that happens due to circumstances. You saying like, I don't know if anyone else had anything else they wanted to kind of share on the topic, something they've not said. Pops.
But I've said loads.
Oh no, it's all right. We've got about 5 minutes, but
okay.
Share as much as you can.
Super short. The one thing that I was going to say is that until now, and that's what I found really beautiful about everything that's been happening recently, until now, when I was in relationships with Caucasian women, bar one, I have always felt that I couldn't speak about race or even basic stuff that happened to me, like security guards following me. I'd get shut down a lot because the other person didn't know how, maybe either didn't know how to talk with me about it or just
within the relationship
immediately. Say again, sorry.
Like within the relationship between you two.
Yeah, whenever I spoke to my romantic partner, if my romantic except for one really, of all the partners that I've had have been white, and not that many. Enough. But yeah, I always found, and I hope now that might change for people in the future. I think that's a really huge point from my experience in particular, is not feeling like I'm in a safe space. And it should, I know it shouldn't always be, but it's presumed to be the safest place there is in a relationship with a romantic partner, especially when you've been together years. I've always been in long relationships. And even 4 or 5 years down the line, if I'm still not comfortable having that conversation, I think that would have played a part in why it didn't last.
That's actually a very amazing epiphany moment, really. Because yeah, I don't think I've ever really felt like I can speak to anyone about race, because I just don't. Lewis, please share. Thank you, Pops.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to, I mean, it just agree with Pops and you, Yem, as well, to say that that's been something that I've sort of been thinking about the past sort of week or so since all the BLM stuff, is that I've had quite a few interracial relationships, and it's not something that I've ever really spoke about with any of my partners. And I guess one good thing going forward from this is that I hope from both sides of that perspective that, you know, maybe that's something that they will, or that I could actually just consciously engage in with that person, you know, to make it more of a platform. I've ever even considered them sharing it with, because I guess you kind of naively think that because you're in a relationship you can speak about anything, which is obviously not, you know, not always the case. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of add on to that and say that's been a good realization for me as well. So,
thank you. Has anyone else got a final kind of hot take realization that they want to put on the table? Jessie?
Hi. Yeah, I know I've been pretty quiet, but I've been taking it all in. Yeah, so it was kind of like, I've been in a lot of interracial kind of, not relationships, but like seeing people. And I was in denial kind of thing. It's like, oh, I've not got a type, it's definitely not a type. But then, I don't know, I do think black people are beautiful, men and women, and I don't know, like, I always question myself, is that fetishizing? Is it like romanticizing? Is it something that's like, I don't know, coming from not a great place? But yeah, so I was just kind of like questioning.
I've got a type too, don't feel bad.
Yeah, you can have a type. It's not that you can't, it's not that you can't have a type even, it's just that where it comes from, and also that you shouldn't feel like you have to justify it because of their race. You know, that's the problem. This is the situation that we're all put in. We're trying to break out from the idea that, but it's also good to acknowledge that could be the case, and also maybe feel like you can express that and just you know, make people know that you are real and you're not just a product of some horrible stereotype that you've been fed or whatever. But no, thank you for sharing that, because it's something hopefully in your next relationship, if it is interracial, that you might want to address, and you might feel more kind of like you've got the tools to be able to talk to them about it.
Yeah,
one step at a time.
I quite like to be quite vocal about things within relationships, and people have actually said before, it's like, why are you so interested, and why, that it's a good thing, like talking to me about things like that. And I don't know, but I'm quite like self-reflective and try and like assess situations and like where I've come from with that point of view, or why I think a certain way, or why we think certain ways, and quite analytical in that way. So yeah, yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Jessie. I know Hannah and Lloyd had their hands up as well.
I was just going to quickly say, obviously there's nothing wrong with having a type, but you know, maybe that's a conversation that you maybe need to have with yourself, you know, as well. I'm really figured that out, but I mean, we covered that anyway.
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say as well. So there you go. Yeah, I was going to say, like, yeah, it's like you just need to look at why you've got that type, like what you were saying, Yemi, like, yeah, it's like, is it for damaging reasons, or is it like just because you fancy people who are black? You know what I mean? Like maybe you do because you like how they look. Like that's totally fine. Like you might like tall people for that reason or whatever. But like I think it's like you need to understand why. You need to look at why you have that type and make sure it's for the right reasons. That's all, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's just, this is what it's all about. We're interrogating race and racism more and more, as we should be, as I am now, probably undoing like 20 years of work or whatever, 20 years of the way I've been, and just suddenly feeling empowered to do so. And just want to say thank you for everyone who is just wanting to have this conversation, and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Hope you've all got a nice very much. And see you soon. Bye.
I'm so proud of feeding lumber, feeding lumber, feeding lumber. I'm so proud of feeding lumber, feeding lumber, feeding lumber. I'm so proud of